Okay, this is College Algebra 1.2, second section of Chapter 1. We're talking about linear equations in one variable. Hopefully these problems can help you with the homework. Okay, first problem wants us to solve this linear equation right here. To do that, I always clear fractions whenever I have fractions in an equal sign. To do that, all you have to do is multiply through by the least common denominator, which in this case is 24. To multiply through by 24, you have to do it to everything. 3 goes into 24 8 times, so you're left with 8y. 24 times 6 is 144 equals, and then 8 goes into 24 3 times, so you're left with 3y. Now I can subtract 8y from both sides. Negative 144 equals negative 5y. Divide both sides by negative 5, and it's 144 over 5 for y. Next problem says indicate T or F whether the equations below are equivalent to a linear equation. We need to get all of them right before it's going to tell us if we're right, basically. But so we're going to simplify these and find out if they're linear. So in this first one, if I subtract negative x squared from both sides, or if I add x squared, either way, let me add x squared to the left side. What happens, I'll have 2x squared plus 1 equals x. That's still a quadratic, that's not a linear. So I'd say false, that's not equivalent to a linear expression. The next one is definitely linear, because if you subtract 3x from both sides, you still get, just x to the first, which is linear. It's definitely linear. All right, 3 is a little more obscure. Let's clear fractions. Let's multiply through by the least common denominator, which in this case, well, actually we can just cross multiply in this case. So we get 2x minus 3 equals x plus 3, and that's a linear equation. Okay, the next one is also a linear equation, because if I subtract x squared from both sides, then the x squareds cancel and I'm left with negative 5x plus 4, so I have x to the first, which is a linear equation. All right, next question says that we're going to do more math with variables instead of numbers. So it wants us to solve this equation for x. So to do that, we're going to subtract b from both sides. We get ax equals c minus b. And then we're going to divide both sides by a. Don't forget to divide everything through by a. So we could enter this in, I guess, as c minus b in parentheses all over a. That'd be the best way to enter it in, right here. Next equation just says the line whose equation is this, goes through this point where t is what? Well, just plug in, negative 6 for x, and you get 4 times negative 6 minus 10, and then for t, or for y, we're going to plug in t. And we're just solving for t. So that's negative 24 minus 10t equals negative 7. Add 24 to both sides. And we get negative 10t equals 17. Divide both sides by negative 10. And you get t equals negative 17 over 10. And we can enter that in, just like that. All right, next one wants to solve this equation for x, so we just need to simplify. I'm going to start by distributing that negative sign. So I'll make it plus and negative and distribute the negative. So the x minus 2 plus x in the brackets now. So we'll need to multiply that by 5. All right, now x and x make 2x. So that's what's in the bracket now, if I just add the x's together. And now I'll distribute the 5, so that becomes 10x minus 10 equals 3x plus 5. And I'll just solve like regular. Subtract 5 from both sides and subtract 10x from both sides, or the other way around. Negative 10x equals negative 15, so I get x equals 15/7 for me. All right, next problem wants us to solve this one for m. So, all right, well, I can't add these terms together in any way at this point, so I'm going to distribute and try to simplify. So I get xm plus 9x plus ym minus 3y equals zm minus 6z. All right, now I want to get the m's together. So I'm going to move everything that has an m in it to the left side. So let's just subtract zm, and I move everything else to the right. So I'll subtract 9x from both sides. oops, I gotta subtract ZM from this side. Subtract 9x from both sides, and add 3y to both sides to get that over to the right as well. So on the left I have xm plus ym minus zm equals, and over here I have negative 9x minus plus 3y minus 6z. And I just put it in x, y, z order. Now I can subtract or factor out an m, and I'll be left with x plus y minus z. So what I've done is essentially, pulled m out, so now m, we just have one m, which is exactly what we need if we're going to solve this. Okay, and then I'm going to divide both sides by this quantity x plus y minus z. And that's my answer for m, but I'm going to try to simplify it. I should be able to simplify it if I pull out, let's see, I can pull out a 3 for sure. If I pull out a 3, then I'm left with negative 3x plus y minus 2z. And I guess that doesn't really simplify it much for us. So I think we might have to enter it in like this. Just make sure we use parentheses over the top and the bottom. You could enter it in like this as well, but you got to use parentheses, to group together what you're dividing and multiplying. So I'm going to enter this in and see if that works. Yeah, that worked. And you can tell why they said this could not be 0, because in our answer, if this was 0, you'd be divided by 0, which would be undefined. So you kind of realize we got something right when they say that, because that's in the denominator of our fraction, so we're all set. Next equation, let's solve this for r. This one's a really easy one. Just subtract 8r from both sides, and you get negative 6 equals negative 10r. Divide both sides by 10, negative 10. And you get r equals, double negatives cancel, 6 over 10, which reduces to 3 over 5. So let's enter in 3 over 5. All right, next equation we want to solve for x. We need to clear fraction. Whenever I have fractions in an equal sign, I always clear fractions. So I'm going to multiply through by 6 in this case, because that'll get rid of all the fractions. 2 goes into 6 3 times, so it'll be 3 times 5x, which is 15x, minus 6x equals, 6's cancel, and I'll have x. 3 goes into 6 twice, so 2 times 2, which is 4. Now it's just a linear equation. So I have 9x equals x plus 4, subtract x, and you end up with 8x equals 4, so x equals 1/2 if you divide both sides by 8. Next question, this is the graph of this equation. Draw a sketch of the graph on a piece of paper, and then it's the following question. So it's got a slope of 8, and it goes through 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's got a slope of 8, which is really steep. So there's a sketch, good enough. The x-intercepts are always where y is 0. So I'm going to plug in 0 for y. I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. So I have negative 8 equals 8x, and then divide by 8. So x equals negative 1 is the x-intercept. The y-intercept, I'm sorry. Yeah. The y-intercept then is when x is 0. X is 0, plug in 0 for x, and you get y equals 8. Okay, and the graph, is the graph symmetric to the x-axis? No. Right, because this point would have to be over here. It would have to look something like that, it would be reflected over the x-axis. Is it symmetric to the y-axis? No. Symmetric with respect to the origin? No. And don't worry too much about symmetry for this section. That was kind of an added question that I didn't really mean to put in there. So we'll talk more about symmetry later. Okay, without a calculator, let's match these lines. Okay, this one has a slope of 1 and a y-intercept of negative 3. So goes through negative 3, should be g. Okay, this one here has a slope of negative 4 and is shifted up 3. So let's look for one with a positive slope that's up 3. So it looks like it's going to be this one. F. Y equals 3. Y always equals 3, but x can be anything, so that'd be E. Next one, we get a slope of negative 3, so it's going to go down, and it's shifted down 4 units, so looks like B. Next one, slope of 1 and a y-intercept of 4, so it's got a positive slope and it's shifted up 4. Actually, that looks like it could be f. I know we already used f, but I don't see another one. Oh, I'm sorry. This was not f. This one's got a this one shifted up 3 units, but has a negative slope, so this should have been a. And then this one, y equals 1/2 x, goes to the origin, has a slope of up 1/2, which is d. And then the last one, x equals 4, y can be anything, that's c. Next equation, find the slope, y-intercept, and the x-intercept of this graph. Slope would be, if you solve this for y, you'd have 8y equals negative 10x plus 5, and then divide through by 8. And you have y equals top and bottom by 2. You'd have negative 5/4 x plus 5/8. So the slope is negative 5/4. And then the x and y-intercept. The y-intercept is where x is 0. So plug in 0 for x and you'll get the y-intercept. And that gives you 5/8. And now if you want the x-intercept, plug in 0 for y, right? Because on a graph, the x-intercept is where y is 0. So plug in 0 for y and divide both sides by 10 to get 1/2 for x. All right, I hope this helps.